Hey guys, we are going to do something a little different this week on Talking Sense. As you can see, we don't have one of our advisors on our team if you're watching us on YouTube, but what we do have is Roman Greathouse. Roman is part of our marketing team. And, you know, we talk on the show a lot about the power of education, but Roman and I were having a conversation recently, and I went, man, you need to share this with everybody else who listens to our podcast. So he very bravely offered to come on this week, and we're going to talk about what exposure, we talk about the power of education all the time, but what exposure to that looks like in real time. So I want to take some time, Roman, to let you kind of just share a little bit about your background, and then we'll get into some other things, but where have you come from career-wise, and what do you do?
Yeah, so I'm on the marketing team. I run all of the video production.
He makes me look good.
Yes, I try. I usually sit on the other side of the camera, and I shoot all of our Fastest Four, Get Ready for the Future show, this show, Talking Sense, and cut them all together. I've been doing video for close to 8 years now, so I went to college for it, and just it's been a passion of mine, so I was happy to get a career out of it.
So you went to college, got your degree, and you were doing all this videography stuff, and then you ended up at a financial advising firm.
Yeah.
So tell me that story, because obviously when people are going to school for marketing, they're not like, I want to work for a financial advising firm. That's probably not on the list.
No, but I think it worked out. So I kind of went the normal route. I was in college and was interning somewhere pretty full-time for a while, and then switched gears, got a full-time job as a commercial editor. So I was working at a commercial center out in Pine Bluff, and I didn't like it. I wasn't a fan of making commercials for a bunch of businesses that didn't care about us. We didn't really care about their business plan, and it didn't feel like there was any passion there. And I honestly just kind of happened upon GenWealth.
Okay.
Yeah. I was pretty much scrolling, looking for jobs on Indeed, and came across GenWealth. Didn't know what it was. Just straight up applied for it and got a text from Sean, our lead marketing, and got an interview set up.
Awesome. So you didn't know anything about us walking in.
No idea. So I knew Sean previously from my interning job. Didn't know he worked here. Couldn't have told you what GenWealth was before sitting down and talking with him.
So it's not too far from my experience with onboarding here. I ran into my high school Spanish teacher at a daycare.
Right.
And then she asked me to come and interview as a bookkeeper because that's what I was doing at the time. So I didn't know anything about GenWealth either.
Yep.
So walking into GenWealth, what time of year did you start first?
I think it was December.
Okay, so you were here for an all team.
Yeah, that was one of my first big team meetings, was like the first week.
For those of you that don't know us, we do a meeting every year in January that is just like a launch. It's a time for us to connect, talk about what we did the prior year, go into the next year. But for new people, I've heard it can be
It was daunting.
Lot.
Yeah.
So talk about that.
I mean, it was, I knew I was going to be working remote, but then coming into the office a couple times a week, and to walk in and be meeting a team of like close to 50 people coming from a job where it was less than 5, it was daunting. Yeah.
And then we all say the same things, think the same things, and you're kind of like, what have I stepped into?
Yep. But it's a good culture here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, prior to working here, what did you think about financial advisors?
I didn't have much experience with financial advisors before this. My roommate during college, we worked the same hours. We had the same minimum salary, like small income, and he worked with Edward Jones, and I was so confused because I was like, why do you need a financial advisor if we're both making the same amount of money? And I know that we're both just kind of tiptoeing on the edge of the line of being broke but having enough to eat.
Yeah.
It didn't make sense to me.
Yeah. So do you still kind of have that same perspective about financial advice?
No. So that was one of the bigger shifts that I kind of came into when I started working here, was realizing, okay, financial advising is not how am I going to take care of my money better. It's I don't know enough about how to do this, and I need to meet with somebody who knows more than me so that I'm taking better care of my finances.
Got it. And so what kind of financial education did you receive growing up versus now that you're on the team? What's been that shift?
Yeah, growing up, I I feel like my family was pretty good about teaching money, but they were very much savers. I don't know that I was taught enough about how to budget.
Mm-hmm.
Took a financing course in college, but I couldn't repeat a word from that class. I think the only thing I learned was how to write a check, which I've done maybe twice since then. But since coming here, I feel like I've quadrupled the finance knowledge that I have.
Because what you've talked about is that really, your job is to basically sit and listen to us all the time.
All the time.
You're coming in every week, we're recording shows, and you're sitting and you're hearing this content every single week. Do you feel like that has affected you personally at all?
That was one of the biggest things starting out was, okay, I'm going to sit here and listen. This is free learning advice. So instead of me sitting and listening to Dave Ramsey ramble all day, I can just listen to you guys actually talk about stuff that pertains to things that I'm going through. So getting out of debt, buying a car cash, how to get prepped and ready for going into a marriage, like financially, how can I get sound for that? I think being able to sit and listen to you guys talk detailed things was very helpful.
Yeah, and we talk a lot about this show and what our goals are, and really you are, in my opinion, a living embodiment of that. So I'm going to kind of lay some of your info bare here, but when we first met, when you first joined the show, you approached me one day and you were like, hey, I've got something, you guys have talked about this, but I need some personal advice about this because, the show we're talking in general advice, general things that most people could apply. But you went, hey, I need to go a little deeper. Talk about what made you ask that and how that has impacted you, taking it from the, okay, I'm an observer to I'm going to participate.
Yeah, I don't know what, I think what clicked for me was doing that. I sat down and kind of did the numbers and I was like, something's not adding up financially for me. Like there's something out of balance here that I need to kind of grab a hold of and fix right now before I let it go too far. And I think for me that was part of it was debt, and the other part I think was too large of car payment. So that was something you and I sat down and talked about. But I think getting to that point and realizing, okay, there's something out of balance here, and then knowing I can just pull you aside and say, hey, can we chat about this for a second and kind of sit down and figure out what is out of whack. I think that was huge for me.
Yeah, so it's kind of a two-pronged approach, in my opinion, about how people can get started on a journey to financial independence. First, you've got to have some exposure to education. And this show is a great resource for that because we don't have a dog in the fight. We're not trying to sell you a product. We're not trying to get you to buy our widget. But we are trying to give you some knowledge that you wouldn't have otherwise had access to, or maybe you've got all these fun, we call them finfluencers. I learned that new word this year. I'm very hip to the kid things these days.
You are.
But there's so much out there that yes, you can get online and you can see it, but is it the right advice for you and your specific journey? So, we can talk in generalities here, but ultimately I think this highlights the importance of also having someone in your life who can talk through your specific situations and help you with that. So, we've talked a little bit about your financial education growing up. We've talked a little bit about, what you've learned, but I'd love to know some misconceptions that have been maybe debunked since joining our team. What are some of the things that, you thought, oh, well, I'm on track because I'm doing this, or maybe this is something I know I need to do that you realize maybe isn't as important as you thought?
Paying off debt was the biggest thing, because I feel like a lot of people my age are kind of sitting in it and they're not that worried about it, but they hear the whole snowball your debt away stuff and they're thinking about it, but they're not moving forward with it.
So what you're saying, if I'm understanding you correct, is that you feel like a lot of people at your stage of life are just kind of like, debt's just part of life.
They're too okay with it. Yeah.
Okay, so they're real comfortable in it. And you mentioned the snowball, and what we're talking about there, for those that may not have heard that terminology, it is a Dave Ramsey terminology. We're going to give him credit where credit is due. But what we have found is a lot of people, when they're dealing with debt, what they do is they kind of pay a little extra on all of their debts. We call that a gunshot approach. Gunshot comes out and it spreads. But what we teach people to do is outline your debts and prioritize them. Pay only the minimum balance on the ones that aren't the highest priority. Pick one debt to be your highest priority and put all of your surplus towards that debt. So even if your surplus is $20, all of it goes to one debt. Let's get that one paid off, and then we'll tackle the next one, and we'll tackle the next one. So it starts getting bigger, right? If you had $60 going towards the first debt and $50 going towards the second, Well, when you pay off that first one, now you've got 110 going towards that second debt. And then the next time you've got even more. So you've got the ability to let that just keep growing and keep growing and keep growing so that you pay off all the debt faster. And in your case, how quickly did you feel the impact of that decision to say, okay, you know what, no more, I'm dealing with this debt? How long did it take you from the time you said, I'm done, to being paid off to where you needed to be?
I think so. For me, credit cards were big and the car payment was huge.
Mm-hmm.
I realized that I could tackle, it might have been backwards, but I realized that I could tackle my car debt faster than my credit card debt.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of what I attacked first.
Mm-hmm.
Circle back to something else you said when we were sitting down, was sitting down and looking at your credit cards and looking at the minimum payments. I never sat down with anybody and looked at the interest rate.
Mm-hmm.
So when you were like, okay, which one has the highest interest rate? And we were sitting there talking and I was like, okay, I don't know. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know what any of my credit cards interest rates are. And then sitting down and going through them and realizing, oh, this one's really been biting me in the
Mm-hmm.
back. But I happened to be able to get rid of my car debt super quickly, which
Mm-hmm.
was, I think, just fortunate from timing and then being able to work here
Yeah.
and get that knowledge of how to and pulling side jobs. I was just fortunate enough to get out of that quickly. And I actually got my first credit card, one of 3, paid off this
Mm-hmm.
weekend. So
That's
that was a
awesome.
huge win for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you had another goal that you were working towards too, which was buying some jewelry, if I remember correctly.
Yes. Yeah. I was trying to balance all of that and get married. So saving up for a ring was a big part of that for me too.
Mm-hmm. And I think what I understood from our conversations was really you just needed to be focused.
Mm-hmm.
That really the biggest piece of what I feel like you learned in here is what you focus on grows.
Mm-hmm.
Whether that's your financial independence or your continued financial unhealthy lifestyle.
Right.
You decided to be intentional. And that's the key. I don't think you mentioned earlier, like, I don't know that I did this the right way. There's not necessarily a right or wrong in my opinion. Now there's a more efficient and a less efficient, but what you needed was a win.
Mm-hmm.
And you had the opportunity to take a win. And that's what we discussed was that, in some cases people say, well, if you're doing the debt snowball, you've got to tackle the largest debt first or the largest interest rate first. I just want you to have a win because I just want to keep you going.
And it was a big win.
Yeah.
Yeah. Paying off the car, the biggest win from that for me was I was so pumped about it. I told Kat, who's now my wife, I was like, I'm never going to have a car payment again.
Mm-hmm.
Like if we ever have to buy a vehicle, we're paying cash. She was like, okay, let's do it.
And I think that will have untold benefits for you guys long term.
Yeah.
Having that intentionality and saying, okay, we're going to plan ahead
Mm-hmm.
so we don't have to do that. All right. So when you think about your financial future, what do you feel like it looks like relative to where you might have been had you never joined our team?
Oh man, I probably would still be at a horrible interest rate paying my car loan and
Mm-hmm.
just sitting on the debt further. I don't think that I would be this close to getting out of debt, which for me is really the biggest thing because I'm not in a place right now to buy a house. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the biggest goal. I wouldn't be near it. I feel like I'm kind of on the edge of getting there.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think I'd even be close to it if I hadn't started working here and getting information.
So correct me if I'm wrong because I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it feels like the biggest piece that you've gained is just some confidence and focus. Would you say
Yes.
that's accurate?
And yeah, and information. I think there was a lot of stuff here that I've learned that I wouldn't have known about at all.
So it's time for our last 2 cents.
Yeah.
So I want to give you a chance to share yours and kind of what you would want people to be your final thought from this episode.
Yeah, I would say that no matter your income, financial advisors are definitely going to be worth it. I think about it similar to my job. Like you're not going to want to pick up video editing software and jump into a big project if you don't know where to begin.
Mm-hmm.
I think the same goes with financial advisors. They're there. This is their job. They do this daily. They know way more than most people do. I think utilizing them as a tool is the best thing you can do.
Yeah, and my final 2 cents would be, my family's trajectory changed
Mm-hmm.
from joining this team. When I joined this team, I was a bookkeeper. I had no desire to be a financial advisor. I didn't even know what they did. But through this team, I've been able to gain so much knowledge, and it has truly changed the trajectory of our life. If you're ready for that kind of change, you can connect with a financial advisor from our team by emailing info@getreadyforthefuture.com. Or if you're in that first stage of education, subscribe to the show. Make sure you're not missing an episode so that you can surround yourself with this information. Follow our Fastest 4, follow the Get Ready for the Future show, and make sure that you're immersing yourself in this knowledge so that you can grow and focus as well. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Roman, for stepping in front of the camera this week. We'll see you again in a week. Thanks for listening to Talking Sense. And if you like what you hear, make sure and subscribe to the podcast to get all the newest episodes. The GenWealth team is available to you 24/7 at info@getreadyforthefuture.com or by calling our offices at 866-653-PLAN. That's 866-653-7526. And while we like to have fun here, we're also financial advisors, and that means disclosures. You should personally consult a financial advisor before making any investment, and no strategy can assure success. Securities offered through LPL Financial, member FINRA SIPC. Investment advice offered through Independent Advisor Alliance. Independent Advisor Alliance and GenWealth Financial Advisors are separate entities from LPL Financial.